Welcome to The Explainer. You know when you're staring at an exam paper and you just wish you knew what the examiner really wanted? Well, today we're going to do just that. We're taking one single GCSE biology question and putting it under the microscope, breaking it down with the official mark scheme to show you exactly how to get every single point.
So here's the game plan. First, we'll decode the question itself. Then we'll blast through those quick knowledge-based marks. After that, we'll tackle a tricky calculation, then break down the big 6-mark evaluation question, and wrap it all up with the key lessons you can use in any exam. Okay, let's get into it. We're zeroing in on question 07, which is all about ecology and conservation, and specifically it's about herring populations. Now, before we even see the first question, the exam gives us two key pieces of information to work with. On the left, we've got a diagram that shows how the mesh size of a fishing net can change what gets caught. And on the right, there's a graph tracking the biomass of adult herring in millions of tons, all the way from 1950 to about 2010. Remember, these aren't just pretty pictures, they're data, and we're going to need to use them as evidence.
Right, the first few parts of question 07 are designed to check your basic biology knowledge. They might look easy, but trust me, precision is absolutely everything. Let's see what the mark scheme is really asking for.
So this first question is worth just 1 mark, but check this out. Just saying the sun isn't going to cut it. The mark scheme is super specific. To lock in that point, you need both parts of the answer. You have to mention light or sunlight, and that it's absorbed by chlorophyll or chloroplasts. That tiny bit of extra detail is the difference between 1 mark and 0. For this one, you just need to pick out a primary consumer from the food web. See those slashes in the mark scheme on the right? That's basically the examiner's code telling you that krill, herring, or copod are all good. You just need to give one of them to get the mark. Easy peasy. And this next one, a classic knowledge check. What's at the very bottom of this food chain? The mark scheme shows there's only one right answer here, algae. Nice and simple.
For this question, you've got to build a food chain with exactly 4 levels. The mark scheme lays it out perfectly. It starts with algae, then you can have krill or copod, then squid, and finally mackerel. The order here is absolutely critical. Get it mixed up, and you lose the mark.
Okay, now for a 2-marker. It asks how biomass is lost as you go up the food chain. The command word here is give 2 ways, so we need 2 separate, biologically correct reasons.
And this is just a brilliant example of the precision you need. The wording you see is straight from the mark scheme. You could say non-eaten parts, respiration, or excretion. But then look at the extra notes for the examiner. For respiration, it says, do not accept respiration produces/makes/creates energy. This is such a common mistake. Energy is released, not created. Knowing these little details is how you guarantee yourself the marks.
All right, let's switch gears and tackle the calculation question. This thing is worth 4 whole marks, and it's a place where you can score points just by showing your work, even if you mess up the final number.
The question is super specific. First, it wants a percentage decrease, not just the change. Second, it tells you to give the answer to the nearest whole number. If you miss either of those instructions, you're gonna lose marks.
Okay, so step 1 is always to grab the right data. We go to our graph, find the year 1960, and read across. That's 2.3 million tons. Then we do it again for 1977, which is way down at 0.1 million tons. Just getting these 2 numbers right is your first mark.
Now we just follow the recipe, and look, you can see how each step gets you a mark. First, find the actual decrease. 2.3 minus 0.1 is 2.2. Boom, that's mark number 2. Then we turn that into a percentage of the original value, so 2.2 divided by 2.3 times 100. Doing that sum gets you mark number 3. And finally, we round the answer, 95.65, to the nearest whole number. And there we have it, our final answer, 96%. By showing every step clearly, you've just locked in all 4 marks.
All right, let's move on to the big one, the grand finale of this question, the 6-mark extended response. Now, these questions aren't just about what you know, they're about how you think and how you build an argument. And they use a pretty special marking system.
It's called level of response marking. So instead of the examiner just ticking off points you've made, they read your entire answer and decide which level of understanding you've shown. The real key here is creating a coherent, logical argument from start to finish.
I mean, just look at the difference. Level 1 is just making a few relevant points. They don't even have to be linked. Level 2 is when you start to connect those reasons together. But to hit level 3 and grab those top 5 or 6 marks, you have to give a clear judgment that's strongly linked and logically supported with solid evidence. So how do you actually do that? Well, the mark scheme gives us what's called indicative content, which is basically a cheat sheet of good points. To properly evaluate the laws, you have to look at both sides. So, for the points for, you'd use the graph to show that, hey, after each law was introduced, the herring numbers went up. But for the points against, you have to think like a real scientist. You could say that correlation isn't the same as causation, or maybe point out that after each spike, the population dropped again. A top-level answer has to weigh up both sides of the coin. So, after this deep dive into just one question, what have we really learned? What are the golden rules we can steal from looking at things through an examiner's eyes? It really all boils down to this. First, be incredibly precise with your scientific language. Second, always show your work and calculations. It's like free insurance for marks. For the big questions, build a balanced argument, for and against, and use the data you're given. And finally, you have to pay attention to the command words. A question that says calculate wants a very different answer from one that says evaluate. See, understanding the mark scheme isn't about cheating. It's about understanding the rules of the game you're playing. It changes you from being just a student into a strategic test taker. So the real question I have for you is this. Knowing what you know now, how would you go back and answer that question differently? Because that is the key to unlocking your real potential.